Hello everyone, my name is Christopher Liam Rose. I'm an author, mentor, life coach, motivational speaker, evangelist, musician, and activist. In this audio, we're going to be sharing a very important audio, which is called the 20 Ways of How to Overcome Overthinking, Ruminating, and Negative Thinking. Currently, at the moment, I'm writing a new book about how to overcome overthinking, ruminating, and negative thinking, because I think right now in society this is what a lot of people are struggling with. And this book is basically to help people to understand that your thoughts and your thinking is not who you are as a human being. And I'm writing this book basically for Jesus Christ, Jehovah, and Buddha, because I've gone through a journey of stopping overthinking, ruminating, and negative thinking due to my own, mental health challenges and difficulties I've faced. I feel like I want to pay it forward and give back and help other people who are going through similar situations that I did by sharing this information. So, in this audio, we're going to be sharing the 20 ways of how to overcome overthinking, ruminating, and negative thinking. So, number one, self awareness, acknowledging your overthinking, ruminating, and negative thoughts. Now, in order to really understand this, we must become self aware of how we are thinking and what our thoughts are. By understanding our thoughts and our thinking, we can understand what is causing this to happen to us. Sometimes it could be external situations, sometimes it could be environments, culture, beliefs, backgrounds, but we need to have an understanding of why we're overthinking, ruminating, and having negative thoughts, which is very, very important. Self awareness becomes very, very important to understand why we're overthinking, ruminating, and having negative thoughts. So we must become self-aware. You can't change something that you can't see. So if you can't see your thinking and your thoughts in a certain way, then you can't change that within your life. So it's very, very important that we acknowledge our overthinking, ruminating, and negative thoughts, and find out why we're feeling this way, why our emotions this way, why are we thinking this way, why do we have these thoughts in our mind, and try to change that. Number two, understanding your thoughts and thinking patterns, noticing your thoughts and thinking. Now, once you've acknowledged that you're overthinking, ruminating, and having negative thoughts, the next thing is to understand your thoughts and your thinking patterns. Normally, what happens in life is that if we've gone through past trauma or human conditioning, this can have an effect on our thoughts and our thinking. And normally, due to past trauma and human conditioning, our thoughts come in certain patterns and waves. So we need to understand the pattern of our thoughts. Is it, are we having overthinking, ruminating negative thoughts, we're in a certain place? Is it around certain people? Is it just when you're feeling alone, depressed, anxious, and vulnerable? Trying to find the pattern to your thinking and thoughts is very important. And we need to understand the patterns of it. So if I'm having a low day and a negative day, what has triggered it? What has made me have this type of day? What was I doing? What was I thinking? How was I behaving? What was my thoughts? Where was I? By understanding the patterns of your thoughts and thinking, you can really find a way to change it. Number three, you are not your thoughts or your thinking. Understand that your thoughts and thinking is not you. So once you've understood the patterns of our thoughts and thinking, and we acknowledge our overthinking, ruminating, and negative thoughts, then we realize we're actually not our thoughts and our thinking. We're actually a human being that is living in a human form. So we're not our thoughts and thinking that comes into our mind, because that's part of the mind, that's part of past conditioning, our past trauma and human conditioning, but actually, to be very real and honest, we are not our thoughts and thinking. So that means it can be changed. That means our thoughts and thinking can be changed. And it's very important to learn this. It's very important to understand this. And how you really understand that you're not your thoughts and thinking is by going through a spiritual change. A spiritual change will help you to understand that you're not your thoughts and thinking. You're a human being that's living in a human form. So this is very important to learn and very important to understand. So what the spiritual change does is change your psyche and psychological mind. So when you do go through a spiritual change, you're no more thinking about your negative thinking, ruminating thoughts, or overthinking. And that changes your psychology and your mentality and your mindset and behavior and your beliefs. So we are not our thoughts and we are not our thinking. We're a human being living in a human form. Number 4, spiritual love and spiritual energy. Discover Jesus Christ, Jehovah, Buddha love for you. Now, once we realize that we're not our thoughts and we're not our thinking, then we find a certain love and peace within life, which I call spiritual love and spiritual energy. Jesus Christ, Jehovah, and Buddha loves you very much, and he wants you to understand that you need to live your life to the best of your ability, and your overthinking, ruminating negative thoughts are stopping you from living your full potential. So you must understand that the love for Jesus Christ, Jehovah, and Buddha that they have for you is very, very important. So spiritual love and spiritual energy is very important, and we can discover spiritual love and spiritual energy by going through a spiritual change. Spiritual energy is the free energy in the universe, in the cosmos. Every human being is spiritual energy. We're not a human form. We're a spiritual energy. So we're all of our body, all of our mind, our heart, our soul, our humanity is based on spiritual energy. And obviously, as a spiritual human being living a human experience, we always go back to the energy that we came from, which is Jehovah, Jesus Christ, and Buddha. So it's important to realize that the spiritual love that Jesus Christ, Jehovah, and Buddha has for you will turn any situation around. And you don't need to live with your overthinking, ruminating, and negative thoughts. You can transcend all that once you understand the love of Jesus Christ, Jehovah, and Buddha for you. So this is very, very important to realize. Number 5, develop a spiritual practice and develop your spiritual practice. So develop 5 spiritual practices. So in life, it's very important to develop a spiritual practice. At the moment, there's 5 spiritual practices that you can do: prayer, meditation, mindfulness, walking, journaling. It's important, if we want to experience spiritual change, that we do the 5 spiritual practices and develop a spiritual practice. Normally with a spiritual practice, it needs to be done every single day. So you need to try and do it every single day when you can. Either prayer, meditation, mindfulness, walking, and journaling. By developing a spiritual practice, you understand yourself, you learn about yourself, and you understand the no self and selflessness, which is basically always about the spiritual change. But you have to develop a spiritual practice to learn about yourself, and that's what Jesus Christ, Jehovah, Buddha wants you to do. They want you to go through a spiritual change, do 5 spiritual practices, and learn about yourself. And when you learn about yourself, you understand that there is no self. Your thinking, your overthinking, your ruminating, and negative thoughts is not who you are as a human being. You are a spiritual human being living a human experience. So you are not your overthinking, ruminating, or negative thoughts. And the 5 spiritual practices will help you to understand that, because you'll develop the qualities of spiritual change. Number 6, discover spiritual change. How to overcome overthinking, ruminating, and negative thinking. Now, once you do the 5 spiritual practices, and I've always said develop a spiritual practices that suit you. It could be prayer, it could be meditation, it could be mindfulness, it could be walking, it could be journaling. Once you've discovered the spiritual change from the 5 spiritual practices, this will help to overcome overthinking, ruminating, and negative thinking, because you'll transcend the self into the no self. So normally how it works in life is that the self is what caused the suffering, pain, and adversities within your life. The self is where the past trauma and the human conditioning is. So in order to live your life where you're more spiritual and faithful, you need to go through a spiritual change, and that will happen when you do the 5 spiritual practices. When you go through a spiritual change and when you go through the 5 spiritual practices, you will discover the no self and selflessness. The no self means no more self and know thyself. When you know thyself, you understand yourself as a human being, your successes, your failures, your mistakes, your flaws, the things that happen to you within your life experiences and your challenges and your difficulties and your suffering, pain and adversities you faced. So the spiritual change is what changes the psychological mind and the psyche. When your psyche and psychological mind changes, it focuses your mind on spirituality and faith. And by having faith and spirituality, you transcend the self to the no self. So what becomes very important is going through a spiritual change. Only when you go through a spiritual change can you change from the self to the no self. So it's very, very important you discover a spiritual change. And you can discover spiritual change by doing the 5 spiritual practices. So number 7, developing faith and spirituality, spiritual connection to Jesus Christ, Jehovah, and Buddha. So once you go through a spiritual change, you do the 5 spiritual practices, then you will develop your faith and spirituality, which will connect you to Jesus Christ, Jehovah, and Buddha. This is what the Lord God wants for you in life. He wants you to connect to spirituality and faith. And by going through the journey of the spiritual change, by discovering it, the 5 spiritual practices you'll be doing daily, this will help to stop overthinking, ruminating, and negative thinking, because Jesus Christ, Jehovah, and Buddha will transcend your mind in the psyche and the psychological mind to discover faith and spirituality. So it's very important you go through a spiritual change, and by going through a spiritual change, you develop faith and spirituality. And when you have faith and spirituality, there's no more self, because your life is basically changed spiritually to Jesus Christ, Jehovah, and Buddha. And you'll start to see within your daily life that you live it more righteously, you live it more faithfully, you live it more spiritually. And the thoughts that come into your mind will be spiritual thoughts and spiritual thinking. So you have a new level of understanding, knowledge, and wisdom once you go through a spiritual change and do the 5 spiritual practices. Okay, number 8, the foundations of life, your life experiences. So once you go through spiritual change, do the 5 spiritual practices, develop your faith and spirituality, then the next thing we need to discover is the foundations of life, so which is your life experiences. So in life, we all go through different life experiences. Some people have a very successful life, some people have a very challenging life, some people have a very richer life. So we need to understand that the foundations of life is your life experiences. But what's very important in the foundations of your life is that the spiritual change will help you to find faith in spirituality. Once you find faith and spirituality, then you can build your foundations of life. Because in life, there's all different parts of life. It's not just one thing to live a richer or successful or prosperous or faithful spiritual life. There's different parts of life which you need to be in control of. So by developing a spiritual practice, building the foundations of life, because at the end of the day, faith and spirituality is only one part of life. So, sorry, there's different parts of life that you need to discover and master and control. So, once you've understood that spiritual change is important for the foundations of life, then you can actually start building your life experience and your life journey. But you need a faithful and spiritual practice in order to do it. That's why spiritual change becomes the most important thing for your spiritual life journey and your life development. So make sure you go through spiritual change, and then you can build the foundations of life and your life experiences and learn through different life experiences that you go through. And spiritual change will teach you everything you need to know about life, because the light is already within inside of you, so the spiritual change will help you to do that. So number 9, seek professional help. Now, it's very important, no matter in what part of your life you're in or what journey of your life you're in, you need to seek professional help. Now, professional help is normally by a professional that can support you. This could be a teacher, a counselor, a spiritual teacher, um, a psychologist, a psychiatrist, a therapist, a consultant, a doctor, a nurse, a recovery support worker, a peer support worker, or anyone that can support you in what you're going through. It's very important to seek help when you're trying to overcome overthinking, ruminating, and negative thinking. Sometimes in life, you need someone to guide you, and you need someone to help you in your life journey and in your life path. And that's why seeking for professional help is very, very important. It doesn't matter where you are in your life, what's happened to you in your life. Make sure you seek professional help and get the right people to support you, because they will guide you in your spiritual life journey and in your life development. Number 10, learning and understanding from your life experiences. Once you seek professional help, then you can learn from your life experiences, because they will guide you through it. This takes learning and understanding, so the spiritual change will help you to learn and understand. There's some things in life we have no control over when it comes to very serious traumatic life experiences, but we can learn to observe it, understand it, process it, and learn from our life experiences, because in life each life experiences teach you a lesson. There's a lesson that you need to learn from each experience you've gone through. So by going through a spiritual change, learning from each life experience you've gone through, this will help you to overcome overthinking, ruminating, and negative thinking. But you need to go through a spiritual change in order to start learning and understanding. And this is very important in everyday life. You should always be learning and understanding, no matter how difficult life is or how challenging life is. Learning and understanding is very, very important. Okay, number 11. The 5 levels of helping other people, spiritual contributions, and spiritual differences. Now, within life, there's 5 levels of helping other people. And you can only get to the 5 levels of helping other people once you've gone through a spiritual change. So the spiritual change helps you to do the 5 levels of helping other people, and the spiritual contributions, and the spiritual difference. Now, when it comes to overthinking, ruminating, and negative thinking, this is the one thing that will help you to transcend all of that, because when you focus your life on helping other people, you're not focused on you anymore. And this is why the spiritual change, the no self, and selflessness becomes very important, because you're not thinking about yourself when helping other people. You're thinking about the clients, the customers, the patients, and the service users you're supporting. So there's 5 levels of helping other people which we need to do in our lives, right? So level 1, volunteering level, the good level in helping other people. Level 2, jobs, careers, and employment, the great level in helping other people. Level 3, business entrepreneurship, the highest level in helping other people. Level 4, faith and spiritual levels. the spiritual level and helping other people, and then level 5, spiritually helping other people who helping other people, the teaching level and helping other people. Now, it's very important that you do all the 5 levels of helping other people once you've stopped overthinking, ruminating, and negative thinking. This becomes the most important thing in life to learn, and one of the most important things in life to do. The 5 levels of helping other people is how you transcend the self to no self, and you find who you are as a human being, and you find your spiritual life purpose, your spiritual life mission, and your spiritual calling. There's so many people in your same situation that you've been in, and they need your support and guidance. So it's very important to pay it forward, help other people, and do the 5 levels of helping other people. So number 12, the know self and selflessness, know thyself. Now, this becomes very important in life, and you have to discover this in life. Spiritual change will help you to discover the know self and selflessness, which basically means know thyself. When you know thyself, you have no more self within you, and you know yourself as a human being. The know self has been a spiritual teaching in faith and spirituality communities, and also in religion also. So it's very important to know yourself and have selflessness. When you have no self and selflessness, your mind transforms, it changes. The spiritual change that you go through will change your psychological mind and your psyche. And you'll start to live the no self and selflessness. And when you live the no self and selflessness, there's no more I anymore. There's no more the self anymore, because you've transcended the I and the self into no self and selflessness. That means no I, no self, know thyself. So it's very, very important. The only way you can get to know self and selflessness is by going through a spiritual change. Okay, number 13. You, others, animals, the world. Your understanding of worldview. So, in life, once we understand that the know self and selflessness becomes the most important thing, and know thyself, which will help you to stop overthinking, ruminating, and negative thinking, then we get to the point in life where we have to focus on how we're living. So, all in life, what it's really all about. There's yourself, there's others, there's animals, and the world. So your worldview becomes very important, and understanding your worldview. Now, when you discover the no self and selflessness, your worldview changes. You start to see that people are suffering, people are going through pain, people are going through adversity. The world is not what we think it is. It's a very negative, dark place to live. But because you're the light within yourself and you've discovered the light within yourself, you can actually be the source of inspiration to help other people, give back and make a difference. And in life, we have to control yourself. You can't control others, you can't control animals, you can't control the world. So what becomes very important is managing yourself, understanding yourself, knowing yourself, the know self, selflessness, and going through a spiritual change, which becomes very, very important in life. And your worldview will change once you go through a spiritual change. You'll start to see truth, faith, and spirituality, and understand what Jehovah, Jesus Christ, and Buddha want you to do. Okay, number 14. Spiritual life mission and discover spiritual life purpose and spiritual calling. Now, once you understand your relationship with yourself, others, the animals, and the world, now you need to understand your spiritual life mission. Now, your spiritual life mission basically should be to contribute in some way, because in life, that's what life is really all about. The contributions you do in life. When I talk about contributions in life, I'm talking about helping other people, giving back and making a difference. So your spiritual life mission, your spiritual life purpose, your spiritual calling should be helping humanity, helping the animals, helping the universe in some way, because that's what Jesus Christ, Jehovah, and Buddha wants you to do. Now, the way to discover your spiritual life mission is by overcoming the self to the no self, going through a process of spiritual change, doing the 5 spiritual practices every day, doing the work of the 5 levels of helping other people. And by going through this journey in the spiritual change, you will discover your spiritual life mission. Each human beings have gifts and talents that they need to share with the world, and we can only discover that by going through a spiritual change and going through the process. So you need to find what your spiritual gifts are, what your spiritual talents are, and share that with the world. And when you find your spiritual life mission, this will be the light that's within yourself, and you will shine your light to every person that you meet, in every work that you do, in everything that you do within your life. The light will shine. So it's very, very important to find your spiritual life mission and live your spiritual life purpose and spiritual calling, which Jesus Christ, Jehovah, and Buddha will give to you once you go through a spiritual change and go through know self and selflessness, which is know thyself. So number 15, spiritual eternity, the heavenly spiritually realms. Now, this becomes very important in overcoming overthinking, ruminating, and negative thinking. Now, once you discover the know self and selflessness and go for a spiritual change, then your life enters into spiritual eternity, the heavenly spiritually realms. This comes from a spiritual change, and this comes from changing your life, right? So your psychological mind and your psyche changes. When your psychological mind and psyche changes, how you live your life day to day completely changes, and you'll be living for Jesus Christ, Jehovah, and Buddha in daily life, right? This enters you to spiritual eternity, heavenly spiritually realms. So your faith and your spirituality will help you to find spiritual eternity. Even though we have to do the work of helping other people, giving back and making a difference, that's not necessarily the thing that will help us to find spiritual eternity. There's no amount of work that can get you to heaven, and there's no amount of work that can help you to get to your spiritual heavenly realms. The only thing that can help you to get to spiritual eternity is a spiritual change of the faith and spirituality, which we find within ourselves. Like I've been saying in this audio, everything in life has to be found within yourself. So the light that shines within inside of you, the light that is within you, that is what we need to do to find spiritual eternity. Spiritual eternity is something already within you. It's the stillness and the silence of your life. You know, sometimes when you're overthinking, ruminating, and negative thinking, and then at some point when you're going through that process in your mind, the mind finds its stillness and the mind finds its quietness. And that's the heavenly spiritual realms, which is all to do with Jesus Christ, Jehovah, and Buddha. So it's very, very important that we understand that if we want to basically overcome overthinking, ruminating, and negative thinking, we must discover the know self and selflessness, and then we must live our lives in the spiritually eternity, heavenly spiritual realms. Okay. Number 16, spiritual mindset. Now, once you have a spiritual mindset, your whole life changes. So, spiritually change your life, spiritually change your living, right? So, the spiritual mindset is a spiritual mindset of basically spirituality and faith, right? Which Jesus Christ, Jehovah, and Buddha will give to you. The spiritual mindset is always about helping other people, giving back and making a difference. It's like what I said in the spiritual life mission. Your spiritual mindset will basically help you to contribute. When you have a spiritual mindset, your spiritual thoughts and your spiritual thinking changes, and the spiritual psyche and psychological mind changes. So it's very important to go for a spiritual change to discover the spiritual mindset. You will live differently once you have a spiritual mindset, and your life will be completely different from what it was before, because the process of spiritual change changes your whole life in every single way. So this becomes very, very important, and what really changes is the psyche and the psychological mind. through spiritual change. So your thinking pattern, your behavior, your thinking, your thoughts will all change, and you'll start to think about helping other people, giving back and making a difference, contributions, and serving humanity, the animals, and the universe. Okay, number 17. Spiritual change, the psyche and psychological mind. This is what spiritual change does. It changes the psyche and the psychological mind. The psyche is who you are as a human being, your natural part of you as a human being. So that means that means your mind, your spirit, your soul, your body, your feelings, your emotions, your thinking, and your thoughts, right? Spiritual change changes the psyche, the psychological mind. So it's very important to go through a spiritual change. And when you go through a spiritual change, that changes your whole life. So change your thinking, change your thoughts, change your life, which is very, very important. So the spiritual change changes the psyche and the psychological mind, which is very, very important. Number 18, Jesus Christ, Jehovah, and Buddha. Now, once you've gone through the process of spiritual change, you've stopped overthinking, ruminating, and negative thinking. Then you're basically connected to Jesus Christ, Jehovah, and Buddha, and how you live your life will basically be a result of your connection to Jesus Christ, Jehovah, and Buddha. So Jesus Christ, Jehovah, and Buddha want you to go through a spiritual change, find spiritual freedom, find spiritual liberation, go through a spiritual transformation, and spiritually contribute to helping other people, the animals, and the universe. So you can only do this once you go through a spiritual change. That's what connects you to Jesus Christ, Jehovah, and Buddha. And in your daily life will change completely. It'll be a faithful and a spiritual life. So number 19. The light is within you, the light that is inside of you. So when you connect to Jesus Christ, Jehovah, and Buddha, this stops overthinking, ruminating, and negative thinking. Then you discover the light was within yourself, and the light that's within you, the light that's inside of you. The light that's inside of you is your natural spiritual energy and your spiritual love. You find compassion, empathy, kindness, self-compassion towards others, and you really want to make a difference and support people in what they're going through. The light that's within you is already inside of you. You've already have it inside of you, right? The only thing is you need to unleash it, tap into it, and bring it into the world. This basically gives you the authority, and you'll be the source of inspiration for others. You'll be helping humanity, helping the animals, helping the universe, helping all parts of life just because you find the light within you. The only way you can find the light within you is when you go through a spiritual change, and the light is already inside of you. So whatever life experiences, challenges, difficulties you've gone through within your life, the light is within you already, so you can shine your light and find your light. And when you find your light and your spirituality and faith, this transcends the self to the no self, and you discover who you are as a human being. Each human being is put on earth for a different purpose and a different cause. So finding the light within you will help you to find who you are as a human being, and you discover your spiritual life mission, your spiritual life purpose, and your spiritual calling. And then number 20, which is the final one, spiritual enlightenment. The ending of suffering, pain, and adversities, and stopping overthinking, ruminating, and negative thinking. So basically, this is what spiritual change gets you to. It gets you to the point of spiritual enlightenment. So you're free from suffering, pain, and adversity. It ends suffering, pain, and adversity, and it stops you from overthinking, ruminating, and negative thinking. So this is what Jesus Christ, Jehovah, and Buddha wants you to find in life. At the moment, a lot of people are just going through suffering, pains, adversities, and just challenges upon challenges within their daily life, because basically they haven't developed a spiritual practice and haven't gone through a spiritual change. So their psychological mind and their psyche hasn't changed. So what's very important to learn is that the spiritual change changes your whole life. So that's why it's called a spiritual change, because you can't live the same way you've been living as a human being. Something will have to change, and that I know it's gonna be a very difficult journey. I know to get to this point of spiritual enlightenment, it's not easy, but just remember and realize that the thinking and thoughts is not who you are as a human being. You're a spiritual human being living a human experience. So you can change your thoughts and you can change your thinking. And once you find spiritual enlightenment, basically that means know self, selflessness, and know thyself. Once you know yourself as a human being completely, you know everything that's happened to you, you know your future, you know where you're going, you know your past, you know your present, you understand your life experiences, you understand what's happened to you within your life, then you can basically end suffering, pain, and adversity and stop overthinking, ruminating, and negative thinking. So this is the process of spiritual change, and this is the process of how you stop and overcome overthinking, ruminating, and negative thinking. So right now I've shared 20 different ways of how to do it. And these ways will definitely be in the book that I'm writing as well. So when I publish the book, you'll be able to see it in more detail and in more depth. But just remember, you can find spiritual enlightenment once you go through a spiritual change. The spiritual change will help you to discover no self and selflessness. When you discover no self and selflessness, you know thyself. When you know thyself, there's no more self, which basically means the ending of suffering, pain, and adversity, and the stopping of overthinking, ruminating, and negative thinking. So this is a long audio. We've gone through the 20 ways of how to overcome overthinking, ruminating, and negative thinking. I really hope this helps a lot of people. This is a very important thing to learn, and thank you for listening and getting to the end of this audio. I know it's a long audio. I really was very compassionate to share this because I feel like so many millions of people are going through this. So thank you for listening and take care now. Bye now. Thanks. Bye.